Good evening, everyone. If you're watching this right now, then you've joined me during the quiet hours of the night, the time when shadows stretch a little longer and stories hit a little deeper. Tonight, I want you to relax, grab your headphones, and let the Roblox gameplay run in the background, because the story I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with the game. This one is for your imagination. This is the neighbor who buried something in their yard every night. Let's begin. The story begins on a quiet cul-de-sac just outside a small Midwestern town, a place where the biggest excitement usually came from lawn care competitions and annual block parties. The kind of neighborhood where people left their doors unlocked and kids played until the streetlights buzzed on. But that changed the night Ethan Fitzsimmons moved in. At first, nobody thought much of it. The house he rented had been vacant for months, and new neighbors were always welcome. He was polite in a stiff, awkward way, careful with his words, and always seemed distracted. The kind of man who avoided small talk, but wasn't rude about it. He kept to himself, worked nights, and didn't participate in the usual neighborhood gossip. But one teenager down the street, 15-year-old Rowan Pritchard, noticed something the rest of the neighborhood didn't. Every night, between 1 and 2 in the morning, Ethan walked into his backyard and quietly buried something. No noise, no digging before then, no dragging or hauling anything heavy, just burying. Rowan first noticed it by accident. His bedroom window faced Ethan's backyard, and on summer nights, he slept with the blinds cracked open to feel the breeze. But one night, he woke up randomly, around 1:15 a.m., and saw a dim flashlight beam moving in the yard next door. The light wasn't frantic or searching. It was steady, calm, sweeping in slow arcs, like someone checking their footing. Rowan assumed Ethan was looking for something he'd dropped earlier that day. A wrench, maybe. Keys. A phone. But then he saw the shovel. Ethan dug for maybe 5 minutes, just long enough to make a small pit, then removed something from the pocket of his hoodie, placed it gently inside the hole, and covered it up. It was too small to be a pet, too small to be garbage, too small to be anything that made sense. The next night, Rowan woke up again, around the same time. Same routine, same flashlight beam, same careful digging. And again, Ethan placed something small into the ground and covered it up gently, almost reverently. This time, Rowan stayed awake the rest of the night, staring at that patch of yard. He didn't tell his parents, didn't want to wake them over something that could have been nothing. But by the third night, the pattern was impossible to ignore. It wasn't a one-time fluke. It was a ritual. Every single night, at almost the exact same minute, Ethan buried something. By the fourth night, Rowan started filming it on his phone. The video was grainy, zoomed in, and shaky, but you could clearly see Ethan digging in a fresh spot each time. Never the same hole twice. Always a new mound of dirt by sunrise. By the fifth night, Rowan told his best friend, Miles. Miles didn't believe him until Rowan showed him the videos. Even then, he thought it was probably something stupid. Dude's burying old batteries or something, Miles said. Or his ex's love letters. Who cares? But Rowan cared, and he couldn't explain why. There was something wrong about the way Ethan did it. The precision, the stillness of his face, the way he stared at the ground even after the dirt was packed in place, like he was waiting for something, or listening for movement. Rowan couldn't shake the thought. Finally, after a week of nightly burials, curiosity got the better of him. The next afternoon, when Ethan's car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street, Rowan grabbed a garden spade from his family's shed and snuck into the neighbor's backyard. He felt ridiculous, like a spy in some low-budget thriller, but his adrenaline kept him moving. He walked to the first mound he'd seen Ethan dig. Knees shaking, he crouched and started scraping the soil away. At first, he thought he'd uncovered a rock, something hard, smooth, and oval. But when he brushed more dirt away, he realized it wasn't a rock. It was a small, round object, white, porcelain-like, a doll's head, no hair, no eyes, just blank, smooth sockets. Rowan's stomach lurched. He checked another mound, a doll's hand, then a leg, then a torso. Every burial was a piece from the same doll set, and each piece had been severed neatly. He was still kneeling, paralyzed, when a shadow shifted across the yard. Rowan turned. Ethan was standing behind him, eyes empty, hands in his hoodie pockets, expression unreadable. Rowan froze. Every instinct told him to run, but his legs wouldn't work. Ethan finally spoke, voice soft and terrifyingly calm. "You shouldn't dig up things that aren't yours." Rowan stammered something. Apologies, excuses, anything to get out of that moment alive. He told Ethan he was just curious, that he thought maybe a pet was buried or that something had died. Ethan stared down at the doll parts in the dirt, then at Rowan's trembling hands. Rowan thought, hoped, he might get away with a warning. Instead, Ethan smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Don't worry," Ethan said quietly. "You won't understand yet." Yet? But before Rowan could question it, Ethan turned around and walked back into his house without another word, closing the door with mechanical calmness. Rowan sprinted home, and for the next 2 days, he didn't sleep. His parents grounded him when they learned he'd trespassed, but grounding was the least of his fears. Every night, he kept expecting Ethan to knock on their door, or watch him through his window, or appear at the edge of their yard holding a shovel. But Ethan didn't do any of that. He just kept burying things, except the pattern changed. Before, Ethan buried one item each night. Now he buried 2, then 3. The mounds multiplied across his yard like graves. No one else on the street noticed. People saw him outside but assumed he was gardening, a harmless quirk. But Rowan knew something was escalating. He felt it in his bones. On the 10th night, the ritual reached a breaking point. Rowan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the blank doll's face, the smooth sockets, the pieces scattered under dirt. At 1:12 a.m., just before Ethan typically stepped outside, Rowan pressed his face to his window. The yard was pitch black. No flashlight beam, no movement. For a moment, Rowan thought maybe Ethan had stopped. Then something stirred near the center of the yard. A shadow. No, shadows. Small shapes shifting beneath the dirt, making the fresh soil tremble. Like something buried was moving, trying to get out. Rowan stumbled away from the window, pulse hammering. But he couldn't look away for long. When he forced himself to peer outside again, Ethan was standing in the yard. No flashlight, no shovel, just standing, facing the mounds, unmoving, for minutes. Then, almost in slow motion, Ethan knelt down and placed both hands on the dirt, as if pressing something back into place, or covering something that was pushing upward. Rowan couldn't see his face, only the silhouette. But he heard something, a faint, almost childlike voice, high-pitched, muffled, coming from the ground. Rowan's bladder nearly gave out. He staggered backward and crawled into the hallway. Each night before, Ethan had buried doll parts. But tonight, something else was trying to come up. He considered calling the police, but what would he even say? My neighbors burying moving doll pieces. He'd sound insane. Then came the next morning, and the police showed up anyway. Not because of Rowan, but because of what a jogger found in a public park 2 miles away. A discarded duffel bag. Inside were children's toys, clothing, and what looked like, at first glance, more doll parts. But they weren't plastic. They were bone fragments, tiny ones, animal remains, scattered and mixed in with dirt, old fabric, and what one officer described as something like straw hair. Ethan was questioned. He wasn't arrested. They couldn't tie anything to him. But neighbors whispered. People grew suspicious, and Rowan's fear skyrocketed. Because after the police left that morning, Ethan changed. He stopped burying things at night, but he started watching. Sometimes Rowan would glance out his window and see Ethan standing in his own backyard, hands deep in his hoodie pockets, staring up at Rowan's house. No expression, no movement, just watching. Once, Rowan walked into the kitchen for a glass of water and peered through the back door, and Ethan was standing at the property line, not moving, not speaking, just standing there, as if waiting for Rowan to come outside. Rowan told his parents, and they shut the blinds permanently. But blinds didn't stop the fear, or the nightmares, or the feeling that something underground was trying to crawl closer. Everything came to a head on a stormy Friday night. The wind howled, rain hammered the roof, lightning flashed in jagged arcs over the houses. Around 2 a.m., lightning lit up Ethan's yard, and Rowan saw something he couldn't possibly explain. All the mounds Ethan had buried over the past week were gone. The yard was smooth, unbroken, like nothing had ever been buried there at all. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Ethan was gone, and so was something else. Movement flickered near Rowan's window, small, skittering, quick, like something tiny was crawling along the outside wall of his house, searching for a way in. Rowan backed away from the window. He felt a vibration in the floorboards beneath his feet. His house wasn't old. It never shook in storms before. But tonight, something was moving underneath, something rising. The tapping began faintly, almost like raindrops at first, but too rhythmic, too deliberate, coming from under his bed. Rowan ran. He tore down the hallway, screaming for his parents. His dad burst from their bedroom, flipping on lights. What? What happened? Before Rowan could answer, something slammed hard against the wall behind him. Not a tap, a blow, like a small body flinging itself against the plaster. His mother screamed. His dad grabbed a baseball bat. The banging grew louder. Claws, or something like claws, scraped along the floorboards inside the walls. Then, silence. The family stood frozen for an entire minute. Rain hammered the windows. Thunder shook the house. But the scraping was gone, until they heard a voice so small they almost mistook it for a child's whisper. "Let me in." It came from the attic. Rowan's dad told everyone to get into the car. Now, barefoot, pajama-clad, soaked by rain, they didn't hesitate. They drove straight to the police station and refused to return home until officers searched the house. They found nothing, not a trace of forced entry, no signs of animals, no holes in the walls, no footprints, no neighbor. Ethan had vanished. So had his belongings. His rental contract was fake. The ID he'd shown the landlord was counterfeit. Every piece of him, his history, his purpose, his identity, was gone. But the police did find one thing. When an officer lifted the hatch to the attic, something small rolled out and hit the floor. A doll's head. Same porcelain-like material Rowan had dug up. same blank face, same smooth eye sockets. But this one was different. Inside the empty eye sockets, packed deep and pressed into place, were tiny clumps of dirt, fresh dirt, and hair, straw-like, but unmistakably real. The police took it as evidence, but no one ever figured out where it came from or how it got there. Rowan and his family moved within the month. They never went back, never risked digging up anything in their new yard, never slept with their blinds open again. But sometimes, far away from that neighborhood, Rowan swears he still hears faint scratching inside his walls. Not every night, just occasionally, like something small is tunneling up from the dirt, trying to find its way back to him, trying to finish what Ethan started. And when Rowan tells people that story, he always ends it the same way. Whatever my neighbor was burying, it wasn't supposed to stay buried. That's the end of the story. But if you're still here, I need to ask you something. If you saw your neighbor burying things in their yard every night, would you dare dig it up? Or would you pretend you never saw anything and hope whatever's underground stays there? Thanks for watching. And tonight, when everything gets quiet, listen closely. You might hear digging too. Good night.